and then beat Knight halfway up on the blocker side.
Yeah, that was a heck of a goal from Seth Jarvis. My favorite goal of the night for the goal itself. Jarvis, I mean, it's a preseason game. He's not going to get too excited about it. And frankly, the Hurricanes shouldn't get too excited about this entire game, judging from who Florida dressed tonight. Anyway, this is first time I've been in this building for a game since, well, we don't want to talk about the last time I was here for a game. This is the Canes Corner podcast. We're brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina. If it's for the exterior of your home, you can find it at the Aluminum Company of North Carolina on Hamlin Road in Raleigh. I'm sorry, in Durham. They're not in Raleigh. They're in Durham. Preseason for everybody, folks. So check them out online, aluminumcompany.com. All right, let's just get to it. We're not going to spend, just like we did on Tuesday night. We did about 25 minutes. Who knows if we're going to get that long into this one, because there wasn't as much, I think, juicy in terms of decisions about what we saw or the lineup even in the game the other night. So let's dig into a couple of things that I was thinking about. And let's start with something that isn't necessarily a super positive in terms of the way it all unfolded today, although it's certainly not a negative. So let's not misconstrue this. Tonight, Carolina dressed what amounted to their NHL team, apart from Jack Drury and let's just say Brendan Lemieux and Eric Robinson. Those three, also Tyson Jost didn't play. Those four players, Drury and two of those three will comprise the fourth line if this were opening night. That's the only NHL line that did not dress tonight. Everybody else was in the lineup. Top three lines, all six NHL defensemen were in, and Freddie Anderson was the goalie. Florida dressed nobody. They dressed a bunch of guys who are going to be playing for the Charlotte Checkers this year. Maybe they get some call-ups if there are a bunch of injuries, but this was not an NHL team that Carolina played tonight. So the final score of 8-2 should have been the final score, or worse, to be honest. Carolina really wasn't any good in the first period. But all of this understandable, of course, because it is a preseason game, and everybody tonight, apart from Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Dmitry Orlov, was playing their first game. And it looked like it after 20 minutes. And for the most part, it looked like it a lot during the second period. It was just a matter of time before Carolina was going to start scoring. And then once the Jarvis goal went in to make it 2-0, I thought Carolina just kind of relaxed a little bit. And then maybe it was a 2-goal lead. I don't know. And then things started coming a little bit easier. And we'll kind of run down the goals because it's one of the things that we do. Maybe there's some stuff to explain, something that's really good that happened in a goal. And then they even kind of relaxed, I thought, at the start of the third when Florida got the power play goal that made it. Was that the power play goal that made it 6-1, 6-2? I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. At that point, I was just trying to stay awake. But then they got back on it. Then Carolina got back on it. And look, you're trying to build habits. You're trying to get guys comfortable with one another. And maybe that's a good thing about some of the new guys that we'll get to. But I just want to start with something that wasn't a super positive tonight because I'd been calling for it. And I know a lot of people out there have, and we go back a couple of years when the Hurricanes started the 22-23 season. Jesperi Kotkaniemi centering, Andrei Svechnikov on the left, and Martin Hitch on the right. And I was looking forward to watching them play tonight. And I think, for the most part, they were looking forward to playing tonight. And I think they probably just tried to do too much. I mean, I joked on Twitter, if you follow me, at A Gold Fan, that Andre was trying to, he was working on his low percentage passing tonight. And Natchez just looked a little jumpy. Let's get it out in the open right away. I have spoken to Marty. I'm a fan of Natchez the person and the player. I believe him when he says this is where he wants to be. He doesn't want to be anywhere else. This is where he wants to be. This is where he wants to be for a long time, not just this year and next year, but for the next 10 years. Still young, 25. But you're not going to, become a superstar in a preseason game. And I felt like those three guys together tried so hard to make stuff happen rather than just let it happen, because they also knew that Florida wasn't dressing an NHL lineup. So theoretically, those guys should have been, we should have been listening to Sweet Georgia Brown like the Harlem Globetrotters, while those guys, certainly the two wingers, just skated around everybody. Now, eventually, Svechnikov got his goal, but it was late on. Necas had an assist on the first goal, but they were otherwise, Jesperi Kotkaniemi started the game great in the faceoff circle, won 6 of his first 7. And at that point, when he was 6-1 and on the dot, going back to the game Tuesday in Tampa, where he was 16 out of 22, you're talking about somebody who was 22 for his first 29 in the faceoff circle. But Kotkaniemi ended up the night 500. So it does level out. His history is basically, at least his history in Carolina, 50-50, 51.3% last year. So Rod will want that number to be higher. It doesn't have to be 60%. Nobody is saying that Kotkaniemi's got to be a 60% faceoff guy, but that number does have to be higher than 51%. If you're playing with Necas and Svechnikov, two guys who are not defensive stalwarts, you want to get the puck first. And if you lose faceoffs when they're your wingers, now you have to go get it back. Not that Svechnikov and Necas are not capable of that. Andre is one of the best the Hurricanes have at retrievals. So good forechecker as well. And I think what we saw from Necas in the postseason was that he was getting, I thought he was great at that, certainly against the Rangers. So, but you want to start with the puck. So Kotkaniemi is going to have to get, he's going to have to approach 53%, which again, shouldn't be too much to ask from him. Big, strong, skilled, should be able to handle that. But that's, to me, trying to do too much or trying, or pressing to impress. I'm not that bent out of shape over it. First preseason game. I don't anticipate any of these guys making the trip to Florida. So the next time you'll see this group, and I don't know if you'll see all of them, you certainly won't see all of them Wednesday and Friday. But I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't see Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, and Necas both games. Because those guys, Rod wants them to form some chemistry. Again, I've said this is going to sound like a broken record, but it's somebody's first Canes Corner podcast. The jockeying for slotting, if you will, between Kotkaniemi and Drury isn't about who starts the season as a number 2 center, as the center between Necas and Svechnikov. For me, it's about how long Kotkaniemi gets when the season begins before the head coach thinks about putting Jack in that spot. And I'm just telling you the reality of it. I'm not advocating for anything. I don't think Drury's ceiling is high enough to really be a number 2 center. I know there are a lot of you out there who believe Kotkaniemi can be that. The organization feels like he can be that. I don't, but I am not the expert. It's just what my eyes tell me is that he's probably a 3rd center, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for Jesperi Kotkaniemi. But if you're going to play with Necas and Svechnikov and you play the right way,
you can get away with it. His body, his size will be an asset to those two guys. And if he throws his body around, if he plays with some physicality, and he gets in front of the net and mucks it up, and I'm not asking him to be a goon, that'll benefit Necas and Svechnikov. They can do all the French pastry. You don't need any of that help. And Andre's game is kind of meat and potatoes anyway, right? Andre is a physical player, so that line has a chance. It's all big. I mean, Necas is like 6'2", 6'3". You got Svech. That is a Rod talked about it in the post game tonight. You can't only have little guys, right? The top line of Jarvis, Aho, and we don't know who's going to play on the left of him. Tonight it was Roslovic. I liked him. We'll get to him in a second. It would be nice to have a big second line, right? Especially if KK can play with some physicality. The line has a chance. If you put Jack on the line, what Rod's going to get from that trio, and I don't even know if that would be the trio. If Jack goes there, we might see a completely different mix, which I wouldn't be against either. Sometimes we can get a little too set in what we think is going to work. Remember, we did it when Yevgeny Kuznetsov came over. I thought, oh my gosh, Svechnikov, Kuznetsov, Necas, that's a line that was dropped out of the sky right in our lap. Like, this is perfect. And they were awful. Awful. So, who knows who's going to play with Aho and Jarvis? Right now, it's Roslovic, and we'll talk about him in a second. But I want to see those three guys that we talked about. I want to see them stay together a little bit more. Oh, I was finishing a thought about Jack Drury. I just don't think Jack has – his defensive smarts are outstanding. And maybe it would work. Maybe it would work much like Anthony Cirelli works on Tampa's second line. It depends. For the first 20 or so games of the 22-23 season, KK played in between Svechnikov and Necas. Andre and Marty had tons of points, each more than a point a game. KK had almost no points. KK had 5 points in his first 20 games. But the line was working, and worked to an extent. Those guys were scoring. There were a lot of power play points in there. I think they had 11 goals for 8 goals against over that first 20 games. So it's not huge at 5-on-5, but those guys both got off to great starts. And we thought that line was going to stay together, but it really didn't. And honestly, nobody really should complain. Carolina had a great year 2 years ago, and it wasn't hampered by the fact that line was broken up. But it has a chance. It's going to start the season, I think, together. I just think the preseason is going to determine how long Rod will give it before he looks at it if it's not being effective and breaks it up. Remember, we always wanted the SST line, SAT line, not SST. The Svechnikov, Aho, Teravainen line. We begged for that. And you know what it never did? Score. Never did. Never scored. We went like 3 years without it ever scoring. Then, for a little bit of time, I think it was last year, they had a little streak, and then it went away. Sometimes just doesn't work. All right, so that's that line. I want to get to, and this I'll go briefly here because we were already about 15 minutes in. And again, we're only going to be about another 10 minutes. So Josiah Slavin, who Rod talked about, another big body, it's likely going to be in Chicago playing with the Wolves. But here's what I loved about his goal, the first goal of the game. Because the goal was the third best thing of the sequence. The first thing that happened, and Carolina was a little bit sluggish, again, first preseason game, and Sean Walker's behind the net playing the puck, and Josh Davies from Florida, again, guy's going to be in the minor leagues, hits Walker from behind into the boards. I believe the referee's arm eventually went up to call that the penalty. I can't confirm it because Carolina scored with their net empty during the delayed situation. So we don't know who was about to go off. I assume that it was going to be Josh Davies. Anyway, the first person to respond to that hit was Josiah Slavin. So he jumped in. He hits Davies. It's getting a little squirrely behind the net, but nothing that forced the referees to blow the whistle. Play continues. We go the other way. Gostisbehere eventually from the middle of the ice, shot on net. Josiah Slavin deflects it. Rebound comes off a night. Slavin then slides it into the empty net. So three occurrences on that sequence. The response to the hit on Sean Walker, the net front presence and deflection, which creates the rebound, and then the goal. Dynamite stuff. Dynamite heady stuff from Josiah Slavin. So that, very good. I liked Sean Walker tonight. To me, I realize it's easy to go, well, he had a goal and 2 assists, 3 points. He's first star. I didn't realize he had the third assist or the second assist when I was making a list of who would get my stars tonight. And I already had Sean Walker as my first star. The power play goal was great, but I just thought his movement, his understanding, is a good skater. I liked a lot of what I saw from Sean Walker tonight. So, and I want to get into something. Walker, and I thought Gostisbehere was good. I thought he fought the puck a little bit. I didn't think the passing was all that crisp. But here's why, and it's not just Walker and Gostisbehere. Because it's not really, they're not the replacement for Shea and Pesce. The replacement for Shea and Pesce really is Orloff and Chatfield, because they are going to assume that role defensively and in terms of ice time. I don't think you're going to see Walker and Gostisbehere play 22 minutes a night. I think that number is going to be a lot closer to 17. So here's what is missing from Carolina's lineup with Shea in Nashville and Pesce in New Jersey. Over the last 3 years, Shea and Pesce played together at 5-on-5 more than every other defensive pairing in the NHL except one. Only Jacob Trouba and Keandre Miller of the Rangers played together more, and it was close. The difference of about 20 minutes in 3 years. So the continuity of Shea and Pesce together. They were second best in possession, Corsi percentage 4, 57.68%. First, by the way, Slavin and Burns. This is over the last 3 years. Yes, I know it's only been 2 years of Slavin and Burns. Sue me. I just did the search for over a 3-year period. Slavin and Burns came in. By the way, a distant first. They were fourth best at expected goals for. This is all at 5-on-5, behind Slavin and Burns. They were second best high danger chances for percentage behind Slavin and Burns. They were the second most in 3 years shorthanded time on ice. And think about this. Pesce spent some time injured, right? Second most shorthanded time on ice behind only Yanni Hakanpää and Asa Lindell of the Dallas Stars. So that's what's missing from Carolina's lineup. Part of that will be Dmitry Orlov and Jalen Chatfield. And we'll see over time. Gostisbehere, Walker. Walker can kill penalties. I think they'll use Gostisbehere in that as well. Although a little worried about that because a slight of frame guy, but good skater, good stick. That's important too. So Walker, I think, will be a very good fit. And I know there will be people who tell you that Walker was a healthy scratch for some of Colorado's playoff games last year after they acquired him from Philadelphia. I can't speak to why, but I think he'll fit in here. But I also think Carolina's got cover. There's a lot of players in the minor leagues on the blue line who can come up and play a little. We saw Ronan Seeley the other night. I think Ty Smith, although he's going to play on the left side. I think there are guys who can play, and there's always Scott Morrow, who right now is a little bit banged up. Hopefully he'll get back in the swing. I don't think he'll play tomorrow, but maybe he'll play either Wednesday or Friday next week. But certainly you would think that those types of players will finish the preseason in Nashville. All right, I'll close. I have two more very quick things. One, Jack Roslovic. I think Roslovic, as good a skater as he is, I think Roslovic could work with Aho and Jarvis. A little bit taller, a little bit of a bigger body, can play all three positions. Right-handed face-off guy if you needed it. Of course, he's never been a good face-off guy, so I'm not sure what that means. Aho was great tonight on the circle, almost 70%. I think he actually was above 70%. Aho was great tonight in faceoffs. Jarvis won. He was 100% as well. But Roslovic is a versatile forward, but a dynamite skater, has played with high-end players before, but I will point this out. I wouldn't expect him to be a big point producer, even on a top line. Remember, when he came over to the Rangers last year, he played on their top line, but eventually played his way off that top line when that top line stopped producing points. If Aho and Jarvis can produce points with Roslovic, who's, again, a dynamite skater, then maybe Rod will let that go. Other than that, it's going to be interesting to see how they configure the top six forwards. I am assuming that no rookie will make the team. No, none of their rookie offensive prospects. I'm assuming that none will make the team. And I'm just curious how it's going to work out. Who will play on the left side if we're looking for a left wing for Aho and Jarvis? If Rod wants to keep Stahl, Martinook, and Carrier together, which I thought they were pretty good tonight. If he wants to keep them together, then Roslovic will get an opportunity there. You might see Svechnikov, but I think it's important for Kokoniemi to have two scorers on his flanks. I just do. And if you're a Kokoniemi fan, I think you should be rooting for that. But I did like what I saw from Roslovic. I loved, for the most part, what I saw from Freddie. Frankly, I was surprised that Freddie came out and played the third period. I'm sure Rod asked him, what do you want to do? And Freddie said, I want to finish it. I wonder if Freddie thought that after the second goal. But I don't think that was as much on him. I think the first one, I thought Freddie was too deep in his net because the shot came from deep. And if you're out on top of your crease, the deflection has less chance of getting through. I thought the second goal, that to me was more about Josiah Slavin not tying up the stick of the guy who eventually scored the goal. I think A.J. Greer scored the deflection goal. So to me, the first one, like to see Freddie out a little bit more on top of his crease to minimize the chances of that deflection getting through. Freddie did stop the nice 2-on-1 deflection opportunity. And I thought that maybe that's a good thing that Freddie was still in, not for the score, but for Freddie, because it had to be a top save. But I loved, other than that, I love most of what Freddie brought to the rink tonight. And I'll just close on this. Tripp and I talked about it. I have talked about it here. I really think that we need to see, and I think the head coach would like to see, but it's all about trust. We need to see Kochetkov be the 1A. I don't anticipate this being a 55-35 split. I don't see there a way on this earth that Kochetkov starts 55 games unless Anderson is injured, which I know. But given health, I think the split's going to be a lot closer to 45-48 and for Kochetkov, and then the other way. But Anderson played well. I think I give a little bit of the edge to Kochetkov for the way he played, and I think Kochetkov was tested more in difficult ways than Anderson was tonight. So with all of that said, We are brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina. If it's for the exterior of your home, you can find it at the Aluminum Company of North Carolina on Hamlin Road in Durham. No place like it. Sammy Hanna and his crew do a great job. You should know that we do this after every Hurricanes game, preseason or regular season or postseason, except for tomorrow. We're not doing it tomorrow. I am out of town tomorrow. So tomorrow there will be a Canes Corner podcast live here on YouTube, but we'll get back at it Wednesday after the Canes and the Bolts, and then we'll do it Friday after the Canes and the Predators. And then the next day, I'll still be out of town, but we'll do it anyway for the 5 o'clock preseason finale in Nashville. All right. You can always subscribe, like, tell your friends. This also is available as a regular podcast wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. Don't know where else you get your podcast, but it's available all the time to you. If you give us a 5-star rating wherever you do podcasts, I'll read it. Tell us why it's a 5-star. You know what you should do? I'm giving away the game here. Give me a 5-star rating and then tell me I'm a jerk. And what would I have to do? I'd have to read it. 5-star rating, I'll read it. So until Wednesday, for me, in this forum, this has been the Canes Corner podcast. I am Adam Gold. Thank you very much for spending the time, and we will see you in about